Welcome to the Beautiful View podcast, where we encourage you to look for opportunities in your life to see a beautiful view. I'm Candy.
And I'm Paul. This episode is the first since we celebrated our 23rd wedding anniversary on February 23rd. So we wanted to do something special to mark the occasion.
Yeah, we are going to discuss some of the ways that we have each changed since we first got married. Shocking, I know.
Right.
And how we have continued to grow together through those changes as a married couple. And we'll share some tips for you to use to grow your marriage as well.
So sit back, relax, and enjoy the beautiful view.
We could climb a mighty mountain, float on down a winding river, travel back in time and face our future too. I'm not scared of where I'm going, 'cause I know whose hands I'm holding. Oh, I'd go anywhere as long as you're going to. Well, I'd go anywhere as long as I'm with you.
So you wrote the first draft of this outline a few weeks ago, didn't you?
I did, and then we got sick. As
We
you
did.
may notice, my voice is a little croaky today.
It is, but you have a voice.
I do have a voice, which is an improvement from last week where I only had a whisper.
Right.
So that's why we're a little bit behind in getting things rolling with this podcast. So
Yeah, we had to miss an episode, and this one we've kind of left until the very last minute, but that means we've only missed one episode, which we felt like we'd missed two because we've lost track of time and everything.
yeah, oh gosh, we're going on I think this coming Tuesday will be 4 weeks
Yes.
of this sickness.
Yeah.
It has just it's been rough.
It's been rough,
So-
and we know that many of you are going through the same thing, so
We empathize.
Yeah, so keep taking the vitamin C. We hope you get better soon.
Yeah. So what else have we been up to besides being sick?
Well, Tyler has kind of entered a different phase in his school year.
Yeah.
He has finished up his basketball season,
He has.
which good
yeah.
for him.
Yep.
And so he had, we had the last 2 or 3 games there, and now the schedules change, and he gets to focus a little bit more on his academics.
Yep. And he is getting inducted into the National Honor Society
Yes.
this coming Tuesday, which is
Yeah, we're
really
so proud of
exciting.
him.
I'm very proud of him.
Yeah.
Emily started a new job.
Yeah, she did.
She's got herself a big girl job, and she turned 21 this last weekend.
So she is all grown up.
big girl now. So
Yeah, so she
all good.
she is now working in Dubuque, so she travels back and forth from Dubuque. So that's
Yeah.
something that we're getting used to as well, just a new little routine in our family schedule.
We celebrated our anniversary
We did.
on Sunday.
Yes.
Or 2 weeks ago, Sunday, I guess.
Yes.
So, 23rd anniversary on the 23rd. So,
Yeah.
thank you again for joining us
Yes,
today.
thank you.
I think today's subject is a really interesting topic.
So like many young couples in the early days of our marriage, we face life changes, job changes, relocations, children, like starting a family, blending our families together.
Yeah.
Pregnancy, infant loss. There's lots of those similar events that happen in couples' lives.
Yeah. And those things each had the potential to challenge our relationship.
Yes.
Today, we're going to discuss how those experiences changed both of us.
Yes.
Both individually and as a couple, and how we've continued to grow together in our marriage.
Yes.
I read something the other day that I think completely applies to this episode. It said, "Love isn't always perfect. It isn't a fairy tale or a storybook, and it doesn't always come easy. Love is overcoming obstacles, facing challenges, fighting to be together, holding on and never letting go. It's a short word, easy to spell, difficult to define, and impossible to live without. Love is work, but most of all, love is realizing that every hour, every minute, and every second was worth it because you did it together.
Yes. Love can be and is about romance.
Sure.
But a lot of the time we demonstrate our love for each other through the effort that we put in when things are not so easy.
Yeah.
Life can be difficult for everyone. It's what you decide to focus on and how you deal with these difficulties together that can make the difference.
I can remember when we first got married. I think we were both a little bit blinded by love. The other could do no wrong.
Oh,
We were having the time of our lives. Do you remember that marriage retreat we had to go to that time when we were on church staff?
oh my goodness.
I think we'd been married less than a year.
Yes.
We thought they were crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I might be wrong about this, but I believe that was just a few weeks after we got back from our honeymoon.
It might have been.
So the memory that I have was it was just plain awkward.
Oh, it was that.
It was kind of designed for couples that were a little further along in their marriage. In fact, everybody else there was like 8-10 years of marriage.
Yeah.
And we had just got back from our honeymoon. And so we were on this cloud of happiness and love, which was admittedly like more like a romance novel. Not that I've ever read a romance novel, but we were put into like the middle of this situation where we're all sitting in a room together. It wasn't like there was many couples either. There was just a few. And so we were sitting together and we were put into discussions where we had to admit our faults to each other and read like these pre-composed messages to each other that we were given.
I don't remember a lot. You seem to remember a lot more about it than I remember. I remember giggling a lot.
Well, we were giggling because it was just awkward.
It was ridiculous.
Like, what else do you do? And then
now to be fair, I'm sure that some of the other couples in that room, like I'm sure it was very beneficial to them. So they were at a different stage in their marriage, and we are not putting down marriage retreats or anything like that.
No. It was fine.
Yes.
It was just we were like right back from our like we barely got the luggage unpacked, and we're straight into like this sort of like semi-intense sort of like marriage like thing. Like, how is everybody doing? We're great. I also remember a trip that we had planned toward the end of that year in complete ignorance and innocence. We were just like, oh, we need to go back to San Antonio for New Year's.
Yeah.
And then we found out that the church we were at, where I was on staff, had this New Year's Eve tradition, and I was expected to be there. Like, it was compulsory, so we had to cancel that trip.
We did.
So we ended up
sad.
We ended up playing cards
till midnight.
Till midnight
with all the
old folk from the church. So that was one way to spend New Year's.
Yeah, well, the fact is, when we join our hearts and lives together in marriage, we bring two very imperfect people together, and we have to try to figure out the ins and outs of how to make this marriage thing work.
Yes.
As a couple, over time, you sometimes feel yourselves growing apart, and it will take effort to make sure you grow back together. You will witness so many different versions of yourself and your partner while growing together. Some versions will be easier to love than others, but growth is the key.
Yes, it is. The biggest thing I have been learning during the course of our marriage is humility. This level of commitment and the nature of the issues that we've had to work through is not going to get solved by a sentence that begins with, well, all we have to do is, as much as guys like to fix stuff, it's not about a dodgy alternator in a car. This is life. This is reality.
Yeah, marriages do take work and compromise from both parties. Let's talk about some of the ways that we were alike and different back then. I was young, confident, and very social at that point in my life.
You were.
I was self-employed as a hairstylist, and I had built up a decent business. We used to think we had a lot in common in those early days. I think as time went on, though, we realized that we did have a few things in common.
A few, yes.
But we also had a lot of differences.
I had a degree of confidence back then, and I do remember the strong, confident young lady that you were. I was, of course, I was 30 years old, so If you don't know already, like we have a 7-year age gap between us. So I was 30 back then. So we're talking 23 years ago. Do the math. And so I was definitely more confident back then. And it was just part of being younger. But the fact was that I had moved to a completely different country and culture that was so very, very different from the one that I had left behind, which meant that things were exciting and new,
Sure,
like when you go on vacation to a new place, maybe go overseas or whatever, that excitement was there. Like it was like an extended vacation from that perspective. But I was also out of my element.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, I was actually completely dependent upon you to be my tour guide in this new world. And I think that might have maybe put a little bit of pressure on you.
I don't know if it put more pressure on me, but it definitely was different because I was used to having my independence,
Right.
my friends, my family, my work, things like that. And I just had to try to figure out how to fit you and us into those routines and the things that were already happening. So in our relationship, you moving over here from England happened so quickly.
It did.
That was kind of like
ta-da, here I am.
Yeah. So I had to figure out how to go from being just on my own to this. I had to figure out how to integrate you into all of those things that I was a part of. So,
And I guess leading up to that point, every time that we had been together, either over here in the US or in England, there was always that return ticket.
right. Yeah.
There was a date that we were not looking forward to.
right. Of course.
But this time, it was for good.
It was for good.
Yes,
So, and I think back then, actually still, I stretch you a lot.
That's true.
I was pretty carefree back then, though, and I've always had a little bit of an adventurous spirit.
Yeah.
And I love a good road trip. I took my first cross-country road trip when I was just barely 21 years old in my brand new car with my cousin. And I flew several times on my own before we kind of got together and got married.
Which is different from me because, like, my first flight was when we first met.
Yeah.
And I was 29.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
That was
very
the first time that you had left England.
I hadn't traveled that much at all. I thought I had. I thought I had traveled, but what I classified as travel in the UK wouldn't have got me outside of Texas. If you take a 5 or 6 hour drive in England, you will encounter some different regional accents and a little bit of a change in scenery, but it's all like within the same context. There's still a fish and chip shop down the road.
Right.
There's still a pub. Some of the things just don't change from town to town because it's not really that big of a place.
Right, right. I remember when the kids were little and we took a big road trip to California to visit my sister and her family when they were stationed in San Diego at Camp Pendleton.
Oh, yeah.
And I think you thought we were going to drop off the face of the planet.
Well,
you had a little bit of a panic attack somewhere in all of that.
Well, the way that worked out is we just kept, from Texas to California is a long way.
It's a long way,
So we kept driving and driving and driving and driving west, the same direction. And so for this guy who grew up on an island, I'm like, we're going to fall off the edge of the world. I thought I was okay. And then we were approaching the mountain range in California where you cross the mountain range and San Diego's kind of on the other side. That's the simplified version. But before you get to the mountain range, there's a desert, an expanse of desert that takes several hours to get across.
Oh, yeah.
And at first it was fine because, I'm like, sand, the desert, really cool. And then after...
It just kept going.
It kept going. And I'm like, that was like the most isolated I've ever felt. And that was the point where I'm like, I've got my kids with me. And our kids were small at the time.
Yeah.
And what happens if our vehicle, has problems?
Yeah,
We're in the
gas
desert.
stations were few and far between.
It was
at that point.
It was different. I honestly felt like I'd landed on Mars. When we first got married, and of course, like this is from my perspective, so I'd be interested to get your reaction to it.
Yeah.
When we lived through those first years as a married couple, I remember approaching each event in our lives, good or bad, easy or challenging, and encountering and dealing with that thing the way that I always had before we got married.
Yeah.
It was interesting to me that, like, not with everything, but with a lot of things, you tended to approach each event differently than me. Like the importance that you gave to that, how your stress level, and how you chose to deal with those situations was different to me. And so I just found it interesting that the way that I approach things, the way that you approach things was different, because we used to say we have so much in common, but some of the differences became evident when we were dealing with situations.
Yes, absolutely. I've always been extremely independent.
Yes.
And I think that was one of the hardest things for me in those early days. I wasn't used to having someone helping me with cleaning and with putting towels away and
I was just
cooking.
trying to be a good husband.
You were a very good husband. Or even wanting to help me.
Right.
So when we first got married, you moved into my 1-bedroom apartment,
I did.
a space that I'd gotten used to being in by myself.
Yes.
And I was very happy to have you there. But there were definitely some growing pains in that time.
Yes. I would say that I wanted to kind of learn from your approach, to find out what makes you tick. But at that point, I didn't realize I would end up changing quite as much as I did from that point forward.
Yeah, that is interesting.
In my sort of lack of wisdom, as I say, I was 30 years old. I believe that I had pretty much grown into the person that I was going to be.
At 30?
At 30. And so change for me was not something that I thought was going to happen. I mean, I was just a foolish 30-year-old, and I didn't realize what was to come.
Yeah. This goes back to bringing two very different people from two very different backgrounds and upbringings and bringing them together in marriage. Of course, we approach things differently. I think the difference is, like you said, you came into our marriage, you were 7 years older than me.
Yes.
With experience in many areas that I was not yet experienced.
True.
And the thing is, we are always growing. In this life, we never arrive.
Right.
There are so many things a married couple can learn from each other if we open ourselves to growing together.
Yes. The other thing that was a huge factor in our relationship at first was that we were just so happy to be together.
Yes, we were.
We had to be apart during the immigration process for long stretches of time while we were waiting for the next part of the paperwork to come through. And so so we were going through those stretches of time, not even knowing how long it was going to take.
Yeah.
But now we got to be together all the time. And so that was the excitement that we kind of built upon at first.
Yeah, it was a very exciting time for us. It can be super complicated when you take two people from, in our case, two different countries, two different cultures, two very different upbringings. You throw some baggage in the mix, and then you have to try to figure out life together.
Yes.
I think that showed its face the most when I started talking about wanting to have children. You weren't exactly on board with that at first.
No. It was a situation where I really didn't know how I was going to feel about it or how I was going to react to it until we were actually facing it. At that point, I already had 2 children and a failed marriage. And so it was tough for me to even think beyond the hurt I had already caused my kids. So when you talk about baggage, this is one of the largest items of luggage that I brought with me. Now, I don't mean my children, of course. I just mean that I was in a very different life stage than you.
Yeah, it was kind of one of those things that we had to kind of meet in the middle, find a meet in the middle solution.
Yes.
All I had ever wanted to be was a wife and mommy, and you had already had 2 children. you did eventually give in, but that was a pretty tough season for us to navigate.
It was, and all of the clues were there for me to read. You wanted to have children, of course you did. You had grown up in a large family, and that was what you had experienced and wanted for your marriage.
Yeah.
But I was focused on the fact that we could share life with each other at that point. Like it was kind of like, I get to spend every day with you. And so children was just not on my radar at that point.
And I think that's interesting too, because it's not like we hadn't talked about that before we got married.
No.
So it is interesting how, you can talk about all of that, which is really important before you get married. But when you're actually in it, sometimes those things play out a little bit differently. But
Yes.
we were coming from two different places and pulling from different experiences. And I think these things happen a lot in marriages. It's all about how you navigate those times.
Yes, and we have a previous episode where we talked about our blended family, and we go into some of those things in detail. So we'd encourage you to go back and listen to that episode for maybe some more background and some
Context.
more context and some hints and tips on how to get through that together.
Yeah.
Yes.
Growing together in marriage means that we actively support each other and encourage growth in each other.
Yep.
It means that we openly communicate, sharing new experiences, embracing changes, and working through challenges together. Let's break this down a little bit and talk about one of these things at a time. We're going to start with actively supporting and encouraging growth in your spouse.
Yes.
Why is this important?
I think that your partner has a unique perspective of who you are. They see you in every situation and they live with you through it.
Yeah.
I think that you know me better than I know me. Also, encouragement and support from your spouse means so much more than like accolades from an employer or support from your work colleagues. Your partner really knows you and can see how difficult some decisions are for you to make. Whereas someone that doesn't know you as well, they are not thinking anything about that. And so
They're looking in from the outside.
They're looking from the outside.
Yeah.
They don't know the internal struggles you're going through or the way that you're wired, whereas your partner really does.
Sure, yeah. Can you think of any examples where we've done this really well in our marriage?
Well, the thing that springs to mind is the time when I went through and did a degree.
Oh, yeah.
So I did my degree in the early years of our marriage.
That was a lot. Because you were also working a full-time plus job.
At
the time.
But it was always a life ambition for me to finish up my education to the point where I wanted to be. So a degree was the thing that I really wanted to do. And so, but that was a lot of commitment. I didn't realize what was going to be involved in that. I mean, now I know. I just wanted to start it and see where it led. The actual process and the things that were involved in getting that degree were way beyond what I had imagined. But you gave me the space to be able to write my papers, do my reading. And so after 5 years of you just allowing me to do that, I finally graduated.
You did, yeah. That was a very exciting time. And there have been several times when I've taken a position, whether it be PTO president at the kids' school.
Yes.
I was the children's ministry assistant at the church we were on staff
did a
at.
fantastic job.
I did the middle school. I was the middle school activity coordinator for one of our full-time families rallies. You remember that?
Yeah, you were.
And you supported me in that. Currently, of course, I work for our business, but I'm also one of the managers at River Ridge Brewing here in town. And you are so good at supporting me in that role. Sometimes even, on Valentine's Day, we were a little short-handed, so I trained you in about 5 minutes to work the kitchen. And you made heart-shaped flatbreads all night long.
All night long. Yeah. And
Thank you for that, by the way.
And I even served a heart-shaped pizza to Stretch
You did.
at the bar. And later on, I said, "Hey, man, I served you a heart-shaped pizza. That doesn't that demonstrate something to you about the way I feel about you?" And he's like, "Rah. I don't know." So he was a little bit embarrassed. It was funny.
It was fun. It was funny. It was a fun night.
And you also do so much to help us run our business together.
Yeah.
They're the weekly tasks that we have since the beginning of the business that you've always done, like social media management for our clients, keeping our business accounts up to date, managing the finances, a lot of that stuff that just has to be done. And you do a very good job of it. And it means I don't have to think so much about that. And so that's great.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things that you do in our business is when you join me on visits with clients. That makes such a huge difference in those meetings because we complement each other.
Yeah.
Our personalities are different, and that becomes evident in those kinds of situations. But those differences, we complement each other, and that means that we can be in a meeting and just it goes so much better than if it was just me turning up. And that's why I always joke that you're in charge of PR.
Yeah, we definitely complement each other in those situations. That's good.
Yes.
The next thing we're going to hit on is communication.
Yeah.
This one has always come fairly naturally for us. I think just the way our relationship started,
Yeah.
when that was kind of all we had, communicating over the phone or the internet
Online,
or whatever.
yeah.
But there have definitely been some times when we've not been on the same page.
Yes.
And neither of us likes conflict.
No, we don't.
But sometimes, in marriage, you do have to talk about hard things.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we certainly pick up on what the other one of us is feeling and thinking, which is hard sometimes because you're like, I never intended for you to feel that way or receive what I just said that way. So
Yeah.
there's a little bit of backtracking sometimes.
Yeah.
But things definitely tend to break down when we have not taken the time to communicate well for a time.
Yes.
Sometimes that's through circumstances. We have schedules, individual schedules that sometimes are different. We're doing different things.
Yeah.
And then when you get tired as a couple, that's not a good place to sort of like where you respond the best. So we put energies into the things that we do individually. And then sometimes when there's still something we need to talk about, we don't have the energy left to discuss that issue together in a good way. So that I think is when in every relationship where little things quickly become big things.
True.
And we start assuming what the other person's thinking, like, maybe you're at work and I'm thinking about the last thing we talked about. And because you're not right there to talk about it directly, I'll start thinking a certain direction that's completely wrong.
We start growing apart instead of together.
And that's when things go wrong. So
Yeah.
we need to keep on the same page with constant communication. That's what we've found. And often when we do that, we quickly realize that the things that we built up in our minds are not as big as they actually are. And then we quickly solve the thing. And more importantly, we don't allow those wrong assumptions to build up,
To fester.
to fester. That's a good word.
I think we've gotten much better at handling these things over the years.
Yes.
Being aware of each other's needs, feelings, and concerns is so important.
It really is.
When we understand each other better, we respond better.
All of this takes effort, but
Yes.
the rewards of taking a little time to think before responding, putting ourselves in our partner's place, like how are you thinking, how are you feeling about this, understanding where you're coming from, it really makes a huge difference in a relationship.
Yeah, I believe that sharing new experiences is one of the most special things a couple can do together. Whether we're working on a joint project together, learning new skills, or traveling together,
Yeah.
these things create shared memories and they foster growth in our relationship.
Yeah.
What are some of the recent things that you can think of that we've worked on together?
Well, we just got through the flu. And so
Yes.
we have both been taking care of each other, like making sure that, you know, if we're feeling like eating, that something's made.
Yes.
And not just in sickness, but in many areas of our life, it tends to be that when one is up, the other, you know,
Yeah.
the others are down. And so one can come from a position of a little more strength and help the other one. And that was like over what now, like 3 weeks of sickness.
Yeah.
3-4 weeks of sickness. We've
Yeah.
been, you know, when you've felt okay, you know, you've
I
done
go
some
on
things.
massive cleaning sprees, shampooing carpets, sweeping, mopping floors, trying to purge our house of every germ.
Yeah, get it out of here. And then when you've been down and haven't been able to do anything, you know, I've cooked or done some things. So
Yeah.
we've been helping each other through that bout of sickness.
Yeah, we also we like to kind of work on things together. So
We
if
do.
we're doing a project on the house or the RV or the truck, now I might not do a lot of the physical labor, but I like
the moral
to supervise
support. Well,
and moral support and all of that.
Supervise. Yeah, a little,
But here's what happens a lot of times. A lot of times I ask stupid questions
Mm-hmm.
and that gets you thinking about other things.
Oh,
like
yeah.
other options. Oh, I didn't think about that. I say stupid questions. There's no stupid question.
There isn't a stupid
I ask-
question.
A lot of times I ask ignorant questions, I guess, just because I don't understand something about what you're doing.
So I might start off the answer with well, you know, we're doing this, and this because of this. And then I'm like, hang on a second.
Why am I doing it that way?
why am
I didn't think of
I didn't think of that. So then I go and I find, you
Yeah.
know, something that I'd overlooked before.
Right. And one of the other things that we, of course, love to do together now is to travel. That
We
is
love that.
probably our
We're
top,
missing that.
our top thing. But I would love, so this kind of started with the opening of a new little shop in town. Shout out to Sierra.
Yes.
Super excited to visit your place. And I would love to take a class together.
I would
To
like
learn
that too.
something completely new that neither of us, I mean, maybe something that we both enjoy, like cooking,
Yeah.
but learn to do something in that world that neither one of us knows how to do. That just sounds like
It could
that
be
would
fun.
be a totally fun shared experience. And I think that those kinds of things, I mean, where you can kind of laugh at each other
Yeah.
and
Yeah, in a
that
group.
kind of stuff, that definitely creates bonds in a relationship. We're gonna have to sign up for one of those pretty soon.
Oh,
I
we
think
will.
that'd be a fun you and me day.
Yeah, it would.
Okay, that's a plan.
It's a plan.
We have been on more adventures since we've been together than most people will experience in a whole lifetime.
Yes.
Also, I do have some fun, including that, some other fun ideas for our you and me days for
Okay.
this year. So
Okay.
these once a month date days are something new that we implemented just this past year.
Yes.
And I think they've been very successful in creating bonding moments for us in the middle of the kind of chaos of life, where we can sit down and we can have conversations
Yes.
and we can catch up. And it's a very intentional time of togetherness.
It is, and as we said at the beginning of this episode, it was our 23rd anniversary
Yep.
on February 23rd.
Yep.
You were 23 when we got married,
I was.
and so now 23 is significant to us.
Seems like a magic number.
So the 23rd of each month is or as close to it as we can get,
Yeah.
is our date day. It's
Yeah.
our you and me day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing about us is that we're just very happy to have a change of scenery, a good meal,
Yeah.
a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the most elaborate date day ever.
No.
It just has to be a time where we can share a new experience together and take time to be with each other.
Yeah, that's so true. So, how do we deal with change in our marriage? That's the big question, right? It's easy to fall into kind of just being roommates if we're not careful. especially when kids are involved.
Yes.
Our kids are a little bit older now, so I kind of feel like it's a little bit easier for us to carve out us time.
It's very different.
It's a different season. Mm-hmm. It's sometimes easy to forget that your partner is also supposed to be your best friend.
Yes.
Not just someone you sleep next to at night and parent with, although those are important too. I would say that we have both changed a lot since those early days of our marriage. We have been through job changes, family changes, health changes, personal changes, and even changes in our relationship.
Yeah, we have both changed. Our life situation has changed. We now live in a completely different part of the country than we used to. We're in Iowa. We used to live in Texas, and that's a big change.
Yeah.
Our kids, as we said, they've grown.
Yeah.
So they're now very independent themselves. They both have vehicles. They both have their own schedules. We earn a living now in not a completely different way, but a mostly different way than we used to.
Yeah.
Another thing that has changed for us is our faith walk. We have journeyed through this experience of life and faith, and we have come to a point where now our practice of faith looks a lot different than it used to.
Sure.
We all grow and mature as individuals. In other words, if I continued to live a single life at the age of 30 and gotten to the 50-something-year-old that I am today, I would be different to the 30-year-old that I was. We all change. But when you grow as one half of a committed couple, as we have, and as a family, those changes are shared and influenced by the relationships we grow up in.
Yeah.
We change and we grow together.
Yes.
I think the key here is how you phrased your initial question. There has been change, but it's been change in our marriage.
Yes.
That's always our goal. We change, but we do it together. I think that takes a day-by-day commitment to communication, to determine where we're at individually, where we're at as a couple. It also includes a commitment to honesty, and most importantly, a commitment to our marriage and the happiness of our partner.
For sure. Life throws changes at us all the time. I have to admit, in those early days, I rode the struggle bus every time we faced challenges.
Yes.
But as time went on, I think I began to grow and to trust God and trust His guidance more and more in my life and in our marriage. I began to look at things with a little different perspective.
Yes. Our marriage, our lives, and our life together is very dependent on the journey God has us on. As we walk forward together, we have seen time and time again how much God has blessed those we get to share our life with and our family as we trust Him more.
Yeah. We have always used our little day trips, date nights, or evenings in as times to talk about things. Big things, little things, and everything in between.
We need to know that we have this zone of trust with each other where we can just talk about our life experiences, because the more we share with each other, the more we align ourselves as a couple and as followers of God.
We tend to stay away from dreaming together, though. I tend to dream very practically, and you tend to dream very out there.
Well,
those things don't always fit together. Now, they can make for some really humorous conversations, though.
Yes, and I think there's part of our dreaming process that's, I think, more similar than you think. When you start dreaming, I instantly jump to, okay, so how can we make all this happen? What's the time frame? Like, what are we going to do? And that's kind of what squishes your dream.
Yeah.
But when
I'm like, well, we don't have the money for that right now. Let's talk about logistics. I was just dreaming.
But when I start dreaming, you usually say, well, I'm just a linear thinker. I just need to plan this out. And I'm like, I'm just talking about it. I think the most recent thing is like, I really want to go to southern Idaho.
Yes.
And you're like, we can't. Do you realize how far away that is? Do you realize that?
Which you don't.
No.
You don't realize at all.
No. It's the whole California thing all over again. But, I was there and you're like, yeah, but like, okay, so let's look up the mileage. Let's say, and I'm like, no, I'm just saying I'd really like to go to Southern Idaho.
Yeah, but you say it like, we're going to Southern Idaho this summer. And I'm like,
yeah, cause
there's no way.
so, and it's like, I like to say those things and just see how the dust settles to see
Yeah.
whether it's like really like a fantasy dream or whether it's
Or whether
some-
I jump on board immediately.
Yeah. I'm trying to get a reaction.
Yeah.
I succeed.
Oh, you get one.
So I think if ever we get a moment where we both like are in the right phase of dreaming about something at the
Yeah.
same time,
Yep.
big things
It's
are going to
gonna be
happen.
magic. I think maybe the only time in our marriage that we've ever maybe dreamed the same dream at the same time was when we decided to move into our RV.
Oh yes, that's when okay, everybody gather up. I've
Yeah.
got this great
Family
idea. Fantastic idea. Let's all move into an RV and take off.
Yeah. And I'm like, come look at the computer. I've been researching that very thing.
Yeah, that was
was
a
pretty
really
cool.
That was a really cool time, and I think that was really an indication that was what we were supposed to do.
I do too.
Yes.
Marriage is one of God's most beautiful gifts.
It is.
A sacred covenant that reflects his love, unity, and faithfulness. From the creation of Adam and Eve to the depiction of Christ and the church as bride and groom, the Bible paints a beautiful picture of marriage as both a blessing and a calling.
There are some very practical steps that married couples can take to continue to grow together. The first thing is to prioritize time together.
Yes, regular date nights or day dates, or in our case, shared activities, strengthen your bond and your spouse.
Is that kind of like the verse in the Song of Solomon, chapter 2, verse 10?
I don't know. That's kind of a saucy book.
Huh. I was just thinking of the verse, my beloved spoke to me and said to me, arise, my darling, my beautiful one, and come with me.
Okay, that could have taken a lot of turns. I'm glad you went with that one.
The next thing to do is to pray for each other.
Yeah.
Lifting your spouse up in prayer builds intimacy and unity.
Yeah, I can remember a time in our marriage where we were just really struggling to find balance with all the things. And you especially were struggling. And I got a hold of a book by Stormy O'Mardian. It's called The Power of a Praying Wife. And I think that book was life-changing for me. It wasn't just about changing you. It was about a change that happened in me when I began to pray for you.
James chapter 5 verse 16 says, pray for each other so that you may be healed. The prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective.
And our final piece of advice for today is to address issues quickly.
Yes.
Don't let conflicts fester. Talk things out and resolve them with humility and grace.
Ephesians 4:26 says, don't let the sun go down while you're still angry.
Yeah, if you aren't married yet, these things are all good things to talk about with your boyfriend, your future spouse. If you are married, recommit today to prioritizing your marriage.
Yes.
If you're single, focus on your relationship with God and trust His timing for your life, and just kind of put this information away for the future.
Yes.
If you're divorced or you've lost a spouse, all is not lost. One of my very favorite verses in Scripture is Psalm 34:18. It says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those crushed in spirit." Trust God's plans for your future.
Yes.
He can bring beauty from brokenness and guide you forward.
Jeremiah 29 verse 11 says, for I know the plans that I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future.
Yeah. Every marriage faces challenges, but every challenge is also an opportunity for growth. When we love, serve, and forgive one another, we experience beauty, blessings, and growth.
And that is today's beautiful view.
Thank you for joining us today. Our hope is always to inspire and encourage our listeners. So we hope this episode encouraged you to focus on growing together in your marriage.
If you like what we're doing here at the Beautiful View Podcast, you can show your appreciation by becoming a supporting member for only $5 a month. We'll send you a members-only Beautiful View Podcast sticker and a weekly encouraging newsletter to your inbox. Your support helps us cover our production costs. The link to sign up is in our show notes.
Also, be sure to check out our merch store. We are so excited about this.
We are. So, in our last episode, we announced that we wanted to gift a beanie to one of our listeners.
Yeah.
You can see the beanie on our merch store if you go along there.
Yeah, we would like to congratulate Sarah. Thank you for playing. We hope you're enjoying your Beautiful View beanie.
As we conclude each podcast, we always like to give the topic for the next episode. So what are we going to be talking about next time?
Well, we have an exciting opportunity in our next episode to interview our friend Tom Oberdeen. Tom is the owner of both Textile Brewing in Dyersville, Iowa, and River Ridge Brewing, where I work here in Bellevue, Iowa.
Yep.
This episode is going to be called A Gathering Place. We're going to talk with Tom about his heart for these two gathering spaces and why they are important to our communities.
Yes. This will be a continuation of a conversation that Tom and I had one evening a few weeks ago. So I look forward to chatting with him and recording that for all of you.
Yeah. Thank you once again for joining us today. We hope you have a great day. And always remember to keep an eye open for opportunities in life to see a beautiful view.
Yes.
We could climb a mighty mountain, float on down a winding river, travel back in time and face our future too. Oh, I'm not scared of where I'm going, 'cause I know whose hand I'm holding. Oh, I'd go anywhere as long as you're going too. And I'd go anywhere as long as I'm with you. Yeah, I'd go